everyone. Welcome to an off-the-cuff edition of Into the Abyss. I'd like to start a new segment called "What Did I Just Watch?" For my first installment of "What Did I Just Watch?", I'm going to talk about two movies that I saw on Shudder this weekend: The Pit and Fingers. The Pit is a glorious '80s. What the hell was that? Um, it's a movie. Again, it's done in a perfect. It's in the '80s, right? So it's got that perfect feel, the clothes, the sound effects, all that of a low budget '80s horror movie, because that's kind of what it is. But it's something I've talked about this before. There's something about '80s low budget horror movies that are better than some of the low budget horror movies that we have today. I think that's because even in the '80s, this is just my off the cuff opinion. I think it's because in the '80s you still had to have access to video editing equipment that at least was like industry level to be able to film a movie. Today, all you got to do is get your phone and some bad special effects that you can buy in software, and you can go out and make your own movie. So it's kind of funny how I'll take a low budget '80s movie any day over a low budget modern movie, because most of the because there's still a technical quality difference. Anyway, The Pit has got a very interesting juxtaposition of plot events. First of all, we have a 14-year-old boy who hears voices in his head from his teddy. And he's a bit of a perv, and I say a little bit over the line of your normal horny 14-year-old boy. Of course, it doesn't help, but apparently his mom still bathes him. And there's this one scene where he's like, I don't really think I'm that dirty, but mom's always trying to get the dirt off me. And I'm like, anyway, so the boy has an unhealthy preoccupation with the opposite sex. Again, a little bit more than your normal, curious, horny 14-year-old boy. And he hears voices from Teddy. Now, this might be enough to build the movie on entirely. Crazy, creepy, psycho, maybe evil, a sociopathic little boy. Except this evil, sociopathic little boy who hears voices from his Teddy has also discovered in a pit in the woods troglodytes that like to eat flesh. So, it's not a far leap to discover that our crazy 14-year-old boy decides that he needs to feed his troglodytes, and who better to feed the troglodytes than everyone that he does not like. To be fair, he gets bullied a lot, and he gets bullied very cruelly. So there is kind of okay, he's feeding these people to the troglodytes. That's not great, but they were really awful to him. He does have a babysitter who he does like, maybe a little too much, because the family is looking to move, because they don't really feel comfortable in their neighborhood. I wonder why. So she's there with him while they're scouting out a new house. And he doesn't want to feed her to the troglodytes, but of course, in expected tragic fashion, when he reveals the monsters to her, and her response is, we need to call scientists to study them, this is a great find. He says no, he gets upset, she slips and falls in, and he tries to help her, but she gets eaten up. And then he has a crisis of conscience and decides, well, I can't feed you people anymore, there's no one left to feed you. So he decides to put a rope down into the pit so they can just get out and feed themselves. And shenanigans. It's really, and I gotta say, this has got a great ending. I don't want to give this one away. It's got a great ending where you're just like, wow, that's awesome. That works for me. But it just moves on one of those levels where you're like, it's a bad low budget horror movie with nobody you're gonna recognize, but at the same time you're still watching it because like, why? What's gonna happen next? So The Pit on Shudder. My second, what did I just watch? Selection is a little gem of a movie called Fingers. Amanda, the female executive, is basically afraid of everything. Short black men, weird looking babies, the fact that she's pregnant and she's worried she's going to turn into a paranoid monster. One day, one of her workers come in missing a pinky. She freaks out, disgusted by it, and this causes, maybe I should go see a specialist, you can help me, whatever. And then the employee comes in missing another finger, and she wigs out, almost kicks him out of the building just because he now is missing 2 fingers, and she can't handle it. She hooks up with a self-help guru, who of course has written a book, and he's going to help her encounter her fears. And he gives her the book, and he also stages an intervention where he brings the guy in to do a one-on-one with her, and he wants the guy to tell her, well, how did you cut your fingers off? He's expecting to hear a story about it being an accident. Unexpected to everyone, he starts telling a story about how these men in crocheted masks, think about that for a minute, crocheted, like hand crocheted, like your grandma crocheted them for you, sneaking into his house and cutting his fingers off, which is not exactly what anyone expected to hear. The self-help guru predictably thinks that guy's also suffering from a psychosis, and that his psychosis is now feeding Amanda's. But Amanda keeps reading her book and starts hearing predictably, starts hearing the self-help guru's voice in her head telling Amanda, face your fear, steal something from your fear, kill your fear. So she goes and stakes out the guy's house and discovers that people indeed are visiting him and cutting his fingers off. So she decides to take drastic action, not because she really cares about this guy's fingers getting cut off, but she's freaked out by the guy's fingers, and she needs to kill the reason why his fingers are being chopped off, aka killing her fear. So she starts setting, plotting a course of action against these two guys, which includes like stealing one guy's dog. And then we find out these two guys are just like low rent redneck, trailer trash, mob enforcers. For a guy who for some reason is having this one guy's fingers cut off. Of course, we then find out that this whole thing's been a big misunderstanding because this mob boss just gave this enforcers the wrong address. So they've been chopping the wrong guy's fingers off. So it's one of those movies, again, so this is an exception. This is, people like to call movies like this low budget and low rent. And I don't know if they actually really are. I think there's a stylistic choice that's made here. Yes, maybe they haven't got the greatest budget, but they're doing, it's not like they're choosing to be cheap. They're like, here's our budget, we're going to do this, and we're going to specifically go for this kind of movie, which totally works. And so that we have this darkly hilarious, collision of miscommunications and people who are probably certifiably insane, but they all act very sane. As Amanda finally conquers her fear, not only of apparently short-looking black guys and weird babies and fingerless people, but also conquering her fear of, being a mother someday. So, at the end of this movie, you're just asking yourself, what did I just watch? So those are my first recommendations for this new segment of Into the Abyss. What did I just watch? The Pit and Fingers, both on Shudder. Enjoy.